Hey guys, Magna back here for another ladder map video. Today we're going to be talking about Secret Spring, which was listed in the title. And in case this is the first of the four that you're watching, we'll just quickly mention what they're doing with 2015 Season 1's maps. The maps they're removing is King Sejong Station, Overgrowth, Merry-Go-Round, and Nimbus. And they're adding 4 new ones, which is why I'm making videos for them. I'm just going to be explaining them from the perspective of every race and every matchup so that you can kind of get a leg up on your competition when it comes to playing on these new maps, and since you already basically have them figured out before it's time to start playing. So we will go ahead and move into it here as soon as I can pull up my notes so I don't sound like an idiot that doesn't know what he's talking about, didn't come prepared. Okay, so Secret Spring. It's a 2-spawn map, as we can see here, and let me make sure I'm on the right color. 2-spawn map. It's a medium-sized map. The expansions are in a linear style, meaning that you will actually expand like this. And I will say that it is a hyper-defensive map. This is a weird map. I can't overstate that. It's 3 weirds at least. So your starting base is actually here. Everyone would figure it's here, but that's actually your natural expansion. So your main base is right here. This is your ramp that you're going to be defending early in the game. And your third base is going to be strange. It's either going to be one that has 2 entrances or one that has a big wide open area. And these don't look that big, but these areas are actually huge. So even though it's a hyper defensive map, I'll explain why if you've never gone into the map and seen it before. The reason being, for the most part, is that the only attack path in the early part of the game is right here. These are rocks. There's no spot here. This is a cliff. That's a cliff here, wherever. This is empty space, obviously, and more rocks. So there's literally only one pathway through the middle of the map to start the game. And these rocks obviously will take a little while to knock down. It'll have to be a focus of some strategies. This is why I say this is such a strange map, because even though it looks like these bases are really open, and they actually are, I'm going to stay confident in saying that this is going to be a hyper defensive map for many reasons. The primary reason being that your opponent could literally just cut you off from attacking them if they really wanted to and they really planned it out. So it's going to be strange, to say the least. A couple of interesting things to note is that these bases are enormous. They seem reasonably sized, and it's hard to judge the scale, but this is actually a pretty long map. The residences are kind of short just because the ramps are fairly close to the center of the map, but these bases are huge. From here to here, you could fit tons upon tons of stuff. Like, you could probably fit about 20 barracks in this space right here. And there's just a ton of space. So what I feel like they want to do with this map is I feel like they want to make this a half map type of map, where players have this base, this, and they can just defend these areas, and it just turns into a huge game where people have ginormous armies and you see crazy battles. So I feel like that's the design with this map, but we'll have to see. Looking through all my notes here, making sure I didn't miss anything, and I think we're good to just move on to the matchups. So, PVT, which we will start here, as we can see. The central passage is going to be enormous, because if the Protoss ever gains control of that, it may even come to a point where early in the game the Protoss just sits their army right here and just waits for Terran to come across the one spot that they know they're going to come from. And worst case scenario, if they can catch a Terran coming from here or here with like a pylon or something, they can still just retreat back to this ramp and they'll be okay. So what I feel like is going to happen is that most of the time in PvT, Terrans have to make an advance on the Protoss. But if the Protoss can just sit right here, they have all this time to kite back, all this space to kite back, they can force field here. They have tons of opportunity to control this whole section of the map when Terran's going to try to be doing stuff. Another big problem for Terrans on this map is that look at the size of this base. All of this is surface area in which blink could happen. And if you have to cover, basically, if you consider this the center, if you have to cover almost 180 degrees worth of base, and these are huge areas, like walking from right here to right here is quite a venture. So blink stalkers are going to be a definite problem on this map, giving Protoss a ton of options. The weird thing, though, is that this is one map that I think is geared for Terran mech against Protoss, which is very rare, but I feel like, if anything, this could be the map where Terrans can actually do it. The reason being is because if Protoss tries to take this base or this base, and Terran can never get across the center of the map or maybe break down the rocks or something, if they can find a good position to post up their mech, whether it's here, any of these three spots, it's going to be super hard for Protoss to break. And if Terran's trying to run really defensive mech, again, all they have to worry about are these small little entrance points that they can pretty easily cover, or at least know where it's coming from. So, considering Terran is going to be in such bad shape with standard play on this map, I feel like you're going to see a lot of experimentation. Half map is going to be very common on this one, and I feel like the way that Terrans are going to have to get ahead is just to take economic risks. So they're just going to have to take an early command center, even though the threat of blink is very strong. If it works out, then they're okay. They can proceed into the next stage of the game. If they take a quicker third base and the Protoss also takes a quicker third base, then maybe Terran is still in a good spot, but I still feel like Protoss has a huge advantage on this map. Another big thing is that Protoss multi-prong harass will be a big deal, namely because I'm pretty sure, I should have actually checked, but I'm pretty sure you can warp across this chasm. You can put a pylon here as well, and there's all sorts of areas for little counterattacks to run in there. You could also fly a warp prism in. There's a pretty significant amount of dead space on the map that you could sit warp prisms in. So I feel like Terrans are going to have to deal a lot with Protoss's counterattacks and stuff with Zealots. I also feel like this could be a map for Templar openers, which sounds weird, but you don't see those very often. But again, if you can just storm this one little area, or maybe you can even sit them in weird spots and kind of hit them at weird angles, such as, maybe if the Terran's trying to come up here, there's a lot of space over here for a Templar to sit that the Terran wouldn't normally be interested in, as well as behind these trees, maybe even back over here. So I feel like Templar flanks are going to be huge. I'd say overwhelmingly this is going to be a Protoss favored map. Terrans, I'd really look about mixing up this map if you want to play it against a Protoss. Drops will be not too bad for Protoss to maintain, because they can do a lot with spotter pylons, they can do a lot with observers around the map to easily catch drops that are coming in. There's an okay amount of dead space here, and these bases are pretty big, but I feel like overall this is going to be a map where Protosses can kind of do whatever they want, and they should have an advantage at most stages of the game. So overwhelmingly, I'd say PvT is in favor of Protoss in this map. ZVP, let's talk about that really quick. Control builds will be really common from Protoss, in the sense that they'll be wanting to hit specific timings against Zerg. Because if you're a Zerg and you're just kind of sitting back here, it's a weird dynamic for Protoss, because if Protoss tries to take this base, for example, let me get rid of that. So I'm kind of flipping on my head here. If Protoss tries to take this base, attack avenues are pretty easy for the Zerg to get up there and deal damage. And this doesn't look like it's that open right here, but it actually is enormous. It's hard to tell from this angle. So Protoss is taking a third is going to have to be behind aggression. So I feel like Zergs are going to have to really be on top of playing kind of weirder paced games. But at the same time, Zerg can do a lot as far as denying some advancements through the middle here, considering Protoss will be funneled. Most of the time, Protoss timings don't have time to try and break down these rocks. So it's going to be weird. Protoss will also have a lot of opportunities to hide pylons, do weird things like blink builds, maybe some warp prism play if they can ever get you locked outside of your base, because if they can somehow float a warp prism through here and get a drop down here on the ramp, that'll give them a decent advantage. So a lot of weird things that can happen in this. It's going to be strange. The timing when the third bases are supposed to go down for both players are going to be very contentious. So we'll have to definitely see. I also think that a lot of Tempest, a lot of Sky Toss could definitely be a thing on this map, because of the amount of cliffs and the amount of dead space that they could sit their air units over. So Zerg will definitely have to watch out for that. But at the same time, that also means that Mutalisks will likely be a good option, because if the Zerg can just make a big spine wall here or defend their other bases fairly easily, then Mutalisks have all sorts of room to play pretty much all over on the Protoss side of the map. So Mutalisk play will definitely be a thing. One thing I'm going to say that's not something I normally say is that Nidus builds are going to be very good for Zerg on this map if the Protoss just tries to sit back and macro. So I've hit this every once in a while. I haven't quite talked about it yet because it's fairly new, But there is a Nidus build where you can get a lot of queens, you can get a lot of hydras. You just make a Nidus somewhere near their third, depending on wherever they take it, and you can just attack them. And the thirds are so open for both of these that I feel like that's going to be a pretty good option for Zerg. So I feel like it's going to be all centered around how the third base is being attacked. So most of all, once it gets into later stages of the games, I feel like Protoss has a bigger advantage if they can fight in these central areas, because if they have a lot of Colossus and you're just running something like Roach Hydra, then Protoss will definitely be at an advantage. The fact that Sky Toss is even viable as an option on this map, I think gives the very slightest of edges to Protoss as far as the balance between this matchup. We may even get so weird on this map that Protosses might even come to the point where they start thinking about walling this off, because then they can just wait as far as things that are coming through their side, maybe use Warp-ins or Oracles or something to keep the Zerg back in their base. So it probably won't happen that way, because people typically don't think about walling off an entire section of the map, but it legitimately could be possible because of how weird the center of this map is. So I don't know, we'll have to see. Let's talk about TVZ here. I'll try to get through it fairly quickly, and then we can move on to the mirror matchups, because I feel like I'm rambling a little bit too much because this map is so strange. But TVZ, I feel like early Mutalisk builds are going to be very common. And by that I mean 2-base Muta builds where the Zerg can feel very safe behind just the one ramp that they have, and then use the Mutalisk to try and keep the Terran on the other side of the map while they slowly take a third base, maybe while they slowly take a fourth base as well. So I feel like early Mutalisk plays are definitely going to be a thing that we're going to see a lot. Something that's going to be common in lower leagues, but probably not in higher leagues, is going to be burrowed banelings, because if you know early in the game that Terran has to advance through this area, it seems pretty obvious to burrow banelings somewhere inside this little choke point. It's almost so obvious that I feel like Terrans are just going to get used to scanning as they walk through there. So I don't expect it to do too much beyond maybe just a fluke every once in a while. I'm also going to go ahead and say that Zerg all-ins will be really bad on this map, because if the Terran sees what's going on, they only have to defend this tiny little area. Maybe Nidus builds will be a thing, because these mains are so huge. That is possible, but overall I think all-ins are probably not an option for pretty much either side. One big thing, and the reason that I'm saying that Terran probably has an advantage here, is because Widow Mines are going to be huge. Especially if Terran can lock down whatever avenue they want to attack through, considering the mid-game is usually all about wherever Terran wants to get. So if Terran has some sort of defensive point, say they're set up kind of right here, and they have some backup Widow Mines they can put in this point, if they just retreat back over those Widow Mines can very easily get really big shots. Also, if they're attacking from this side, this is fairly open, but it's not that bad. I think like Terrans will have a pretty decent advantage here. And if Zergs try to take this base over here, or of course on this side, they're mirrored, then Terran can knock down these rocks. They'll get a really nice position to post right there. I feel like Terran has a lot of advantages in unusual ways. Most of all, if we stray away from standard play a little bit more, I feel like Super Turtle Mech is going to be really good on this map for Terran. Namely because it's going to take Zerg a long time to get through here. Like we talked about, these chokes are really small, so you could post just a few tanks here and you'd be able to hold out just fine. Even if the rocks are broken down here, I don't know. Nidus seems to be a recurring theme, so I think 3-base Nidus versus mech is going to definitely be a very cool dynamic that could happen on this map quite a bit. But overall, I feel like Terran does have a slight advantage for various reasons, namely because I feel like there's going to be a build that Terrans just figure out on this map, whether it's because of the huge drop surface area, or whether it's because of mech being really good and Swarm Host not nearly being as good, considering the Swarm Host would have to get somewhere on the Terran side of the map to start mattering. I feel like Terrans are going to take the lead in this matchup on this map. So let's talk about the mirror matchups now. Blink all-ins will be really common, because once again the surface area is huge, and if your build disrespects blink all-ins, like say opening Stargate for example, it's going to be pretty rough. At the same time, considering you do have an in-base natural back here, fast robo-expands will also be a thing, since you can just wall this off with 1 sentry if they try to get aggressive without blink. I also think that there's going to be a lot of really mass stalemates with Colossus on this map, because if both players theoretically are sitting their armies somewhere around here and generally protecting their 2 bases, then both players will be sitting with a tiny little area between them, and if both of them have about 6 Colossus, then whoever decides to walk through here is just going to straight up lose. So this may be a map where we start to see people just skipping the whole Colossus phase and just going straight for Tempest, straight for Void Ray, straight for Carriers, weird things like that, just because they have so much protection from ground forces and ground advancements. So it'll be a massive, massive defender's advantage matchup in PvP, assuming it lasts to the point where they can start controlling this area of the map instead of having to sink further back towards their thirds most of the time. So that'll be weird. We'll have to see what happens with that. TVT, I feel like really fast tank builds will be a thing, mostly because the distance between your ramp and this choke point is actually pretty small. So defensive tanks are going to be really good on this map. So I feel like both players are going to be opening up with pretty fast tanks, and that'll be a pretty important thing. I also think drop play is going to be really good because while a mech player will think, oh, there's only this tiny little space, there's also infinity places to drop that the other Terran might not necessarily be considering. And again, because these are huge bases, this area right here could actually fill about 5 or 6 medevacs full of stuff. These bases are huge, and there's a lot of open places to drop. So this is going to be a strange map in the sense that positioning is going to be really important as far as preventing your opponent from gaining an advantage over this area especially, but drops will definitely throw it off, and I feel like this map is just going to be insane chaos everywhere all the time. One other interesting thing to know is we could see some faster Reaper Rush openers, considering the distance from these two ramps is actually really small. So if somebody opened up with 2 or 3 racks Reaper or something weird like that, the Reapers are going to get there pretty fast. Lastly, ZVZ. I think Spire play is going to be the way to go on this map, considering, again, these choke points are really small, so Roach versus Roach will probably not be a thing. It's really easy to defend these areas, and once you get into Mutalisk play, holding on to these is going to be a little bit easier, as well as the fact that if you open up with early Banelings or something, you're not going to see a lot of Baneling wars happening here. You're probably going to see more Baneling wars happening around here, stuff like that. Let me draw a little face for you guys. That's a bad nose, but whatever. Anyway, so I feel like Mutalisk versus Mutalisk is definitely going to be a thing on this. Defender's advantage is really huge, and we may get into weird situations in ZVZ where you get Swarm Host stalemates. I don't really expect that because offensive Swarm Hosts are not going to be that good, but still it is possible. So, yeah. Anyway, I think that's about all I have to say. Let's talk about overall benefits for each race. I would say Protoss probably has the biggest advantage on this map, just because almost everything in their book seems like it's an option in pretty much every matchup. So I think this is probably the best for Protoss. I think Terran, it's okay. That's right, I'm just going to write okay. It's okay in the sense that you will be struggling a lot in PvT, but I think you're going to do okay with mech builds and stuff against Zerg. So if you're a mech player, this is probably going to be a map that you really like. But Bio will be meh. TVT is just going to be insanity. ZVZ, or rather, excuse me, I was just meant to say Zerg, probably the worst for this map. I would probably say just veto this map if you're Zerg. Just because you're going to have to play some weird strategies that you've probably never done before in order to have the best chance to win. So, hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it gave you guys at least some decent insight on how this map should work as people start to figure it out. Once again, as I'm going to do in pretty much every video, is I'm going to list the final map pool. And the map pool for 2015 Season 1 is going to be Deadwing, Catalina, Foxtrot Labs, Expedition Lost, Infernal Pools, Secret Spring, which we just learned about, and Vanai Research Station, or Vanai, whatever you want to call it. I guess I'm just going to wait until more people start to say it before deciding on how it's supposed to be said. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you want to see more from me, go ahead and subscribe. I do put out videos more regularly now than I have before, just because I am on semester break. So I'll be talking a lot about Legacy of the Void stuff that might be coming up, new announcements about balance and whatnot that they've already talked about. So check it out. I'll talk to you guys very soon, and thanks for checking out this video. See ya.